For some people, the outdoors is a hobby. For others, it's a lifestyle. Torque wheels are built for the ones who chase sunrise on the water, track game through the timber, and spend weekends towing boats, campers, and ATVs to the next adventure. With a full lineup of wheel sizes and fitments for trucks, SUVs, vans, trailers, and RVs, Torque wheels are made to match your lifestyle and your rig. Wherever you go, whatever you haul, go with confidence. Visit torquewheels.com to find a retailer near you.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn, a celebration of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you in partnership with DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, makers of award-winning pistols and revolvers. Stealth Vision, high-tech precision hunting optics for today's hunter. Agar Cafe, elevated coffee, elevated life. Destination Hunts, your premier hunt advisor. Choctaw Hunting Lodge for some of the finest hunting in North America. And Double Nickel Taxidermy, preserving your memories.
Dr. Mike Arnold back from Africa. I cannot wait to hear some of your most recent adventures. Tell me all about it.
Hey, thank you, Larry. How are you doing? You doing all right?
Absolutely. I'm doing great. We just got back from our Texas Wildlife Association convention, our party first, and this will play probably after you and I have been together at the DSC Summer Expo and, of course, the DSC Foundation Gala as well too, which I'm sure will be absolutely successful based upon the great things that I'm hearing. And we'll try to do some stuff from there. Maybe we'll try to do another one when we're there. But so yes, sir, I'm doing great. But my gosh, how many times Africa, and where were you? No, don't forget about how many times. I mean, forget about that, because I know you've been a bunch. You probably can't, being a PhD in genetics, you probably can't count that high anyway. So
I can't. I have my shoes on, so it's not a pretty sight when I have to start taking my socks off.
Oh gosh, please don't.
Well, we, one of the things that I read many, many years ago was once you had paid for the transatlantic flight, you paid for a big chunk of it. So while you're there, you try to do as much as you can. And of course,
yes,
you know this better than I do, but as an outdoor writer and all the other stuff we do, podcasting and stuff, that it's always better to try to put in little mini safaris.
Yes.
I guess, when you go to Africa, I mean, it's just like when you went to Europe and did 3 countries for roebuck. I mean, that's a lot more bang for that transatlantic buck. But
yes.
So what we did was we flew into South Africa like normal, into Johannesburg from Atlanta, that 16-hour flight, and got a lot done on the plane, and don't ever sleep, so get a ton done. End up being a vegetable on the other end, but that's all right. And then we headed from Johannesburg. We headed to what's called the Great Karoo, and
yes,
if those who know anything about the Boer Trek and all that, when they got all frustrated with the English and said to heck with y'all and moved away from South Africa, sort of, or at least down in the southern part of it, they trekked across and into this area, and it's an elevated area. Reminds me, my very first safari back in 2000, when was that, 18, started there in the Great Karoo when I went after a Vol Rebuck. So I fell in love with the area then. It looks a lot like the Wyoming, Montana-ish kind of area, that high desert looking area. And,
Right.
So we were at about, I think we were at about 6,000 feet, 6,500. So for flatlanders like us, because we live at zero, we actually noticed that. But what we were there for is to go to a new area in the Great Karoo, a new property that was organized by some friends of ours. I wanted to hunt both the Bontebok, which is a damask, and its real close subspecific cousin, which is called the Blessbok. And the reason I wanted to hunt both of them, first of all, the Bontebok and the Blessbok is interesting, but the Bontebok is this purplish antelope-looking thing with striking markings on it, white. I mean, it's gorgeous, absolutely drop-dead gorgeous. But I also wanted to hunt them because they're going to be one of the characters, or the two characters in one of my chapters in my new book that I'm working on about hunters and bringing back the species that nearly went extinct.
Yes,
and
sir.
Bontebok and Blessbok are both that. I knew that about the Bontebok, and I got a confession. I did not know that about the Blessbok. I never knew that it was driven close to extinction too. Makes
really?
sense.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't know it either, because the darn things are so. Now you go into South Africa and there are Blessboks all over the place, and I just never even thought about it. But the Blessbok was driven down to the same few thousand or less numbers of individuals, just like the Bontebok was. Maybe a little bit more individuals left, but it was the same reason. They were competing with the agricultural systems, as seen by the farmers there. They didn't want them eating the stuff that their sheep or goats or cattle were eating, so they killed them off. But they were also a protein source. So they just, as the migrants went through, they shot them all and ate them. They didn't throw away the meat, but they ate them. So anyway, they are a focus. Those two subspecies are same species, belong to the same species, and they are the focus of one of my chapters. So I wanted to hunt them. Now, here's the funny thing. I went across thinking this is going to be dirt easy. Okay, Bonteboks are going to be standing around, in a pasture somewhere, not a small one. I knew it was a 28,000 spread, low fenced area for the Bontebok, and I knew, we probably have to work a little bit. We chased those sons of guns around for hours and hours and hours. Now, I'm a crap at stalking, unlike Larry, Mr. Whitetail Weishuhn, but it was actually that the darn things were as goofy and as flighty as pronghorn antelope during the hunting season. I mean,
really?
yeah, boy, I tell you, they have good eyesight. And the most common sight of the Bontebok and the Blessbok, I might add, was tails, and running animals at like 400 yards. I mean, they just didn't let us get very close. So I finally got a Bontebok, a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful old ram. I mean, he is gorgeous. But I had to shoot him at distance. I mean, it wasn't terribly far. It was about 250 yards off of those standing stable sticks that I use all the time. And so they, we got him one shot. He went down and that sort of thing. The Blessbok, the more confessions from one of those guys who never misses. I missed a Blessbok twice. And same Blessbok, he couldn't believe I was shooting at him. I think, it was like, am I in a bad neighborhood here? I mean, I'm hearing bullets whizzing past, and I didn't get him. He ran off into the bushes after I shot at him the second time, and I looked at my guide and I said, well, he said, nah, everybody misses. And I said, yeah, I'm going to have to write about this one though. That's the embarrassing part. And of course, Francis was videoing the bloody thing, and all you hear is me swearing, and saying I don't understand it, and everybody understood it. Mike Arnold jerked the darn trigger twice. But anyway, so the next next one we actually got him, and he was at a couple 250 yards too, just like the Bontebok, and magically he dropped to the first shot. So that was that portion of the trip was up there. Now this property, Winlock Safaris, it's very new. I mean, they've been only going for 5 years, hunting for 3. They have about 50,000 acres between the two places. You know, the low fenced area that I talked about, the Bonteboks are on.
Right.
The high fenced area, which is about the same size, 20-ish thousand acres. Of course, we never saw, it's like anything there. You don't see the high fence. We saw the low fences more than we did the high fences because it's pasture land kind of thing. Right. But they pulled up all of the interior fencing on this property because it was a farm. I mean, they didn't, before they turned it into a game farm, the high fenced area. But it's high fenced because they have white rhinos on it and that sort of thing. But of course the kudu and things like that, and the little ones that they have there, they have volleys and vol reeboks, and they have mountain reedbucks, of course, and they have dikers and stuff that don't see those fences, obviously. And the kudu, it's so funny. They have videos of the kudus just saying, "Oh, this fence," and just hopping over it into the low fence area, because there are cows on the other side. And so it doesn't stop a whole heck of a lot. But the thing was, they have white rhinos, and so they need to protect them from poachers and also from getting out into other people's places. But it was a beautiful, they have a brand new lodge and brand new sleeping areas and all. It's a gorgeous place, and they're going to do real well. It's not going to be a high traffic place. Let's put it that way. They don't. He said, we don't really want a lot of boots on the ground. If somebody wants to come in and harvest 9 species, great, but we're going to do it by what they want it self-sustaining. They're not put and take. So everything has to be, they're going to census it every year. They're doing it the right way, I guess is what I would say from a good standpoint. Now from there we drove.
I'm going to stop you for just a little bit. Now, you mentioned the Valray buck, the mountain reed buck. Those are, and you mentioned the 6,000 feet. That's really unusual for lots of Africa, is it not?
It is, this is the thing that folks don't realize, I think, and others have written about it, but, we've been snowed on.
Yes, I have too.
I know, I figured you had, and so it was, it was nippy because June obviously is the first month in their winter because they're south of the equator.
Right.
And that, their property for the volleys and the mountain reedbucks actually, I said 6,000 feet. That's down in the plains. Their property in the mountains goes even higher. And that's where they would hunt, things like the mountain reedbuck and the volleys. I saw a mountain reedbuck there. I didn't see any volleys, but they're in the hills there. They're in the mountains there. So, in the mountain, when we say mountains, they're not the Rockies. They're not up to 10 to 12, but they do get up to 6,500, 7,500 feet, maybe 8. I don't know. Up there in Stormberg where we went next, they may get up to that.
Right. Now, you mentioned the Blessbok and the Bontebok. What I remember, the reason I stopped you earlier is because when I was in that area, it's been several years ago, we were finding Blessbok at the very tops of some of those tall hills, I guess. Let's call them that. We won't call them mountains at the moment. But did you see the same thing with the Blessbok and the Bontebok way up high?
The Bontebok and the Blessbok that we hunted were down in the plains. Okay, they were now the Bontebok, you have to remember tell you, it's on an agricultural 28,000 acre farm / ranch. So they're not going to have that. Obviously, they're not going to position that up in the mountains. But now it was low fenced, but it didn't have cross fencing in it, but it was low fenced. But but they were down in the plains by design. Now, whether or not they can, like you just said, they can be up in the hills. Now, what he did tell me about the Blessbok is that you'll see them and other animals moving across, because this property that's quote unquote the game farm has both plains as well as the normal Great Karoo rocky mountains / hills. And so he said you'll see them moving back and forth in the property, not just the Blessbok, but other things as well. And I think it depends probably on water. You know, they're going to move to the water sources. That's my guess.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
Okay, and that's probably what the situation was, because, like I said, we saw. I was really surprised when I saw the Blessbok at the very tops of some of those things, and very likely, as you just mentioned, and I'm trying to remember, because it seemed like the upper higher country was greener by far than the lower country that we were in, and so it was probably a matter of food and water. So okay, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that was a great question. Yeah. I mean, and there were an awful lot of pretty animals on this property too, as we were driving around, and people want to go game viewing and stuff, and it was pretty. Yeah, I mean, there were some tempting animals there. If I hadn't had Frances hitting me on top of the head over and over again, I probably would have harvested more stuff. So, and I'm pretty certain she was using the darn butt of the gun. But so we moved from there to, like I said, a little bit higher up. It's an area called Stormberg, and we've been there before, and we went there for a bird hunt. And Diana Rupp from Sports Afield asked if she found out I was going to do a bird hunt over there again, because I love hunting birds in Africa. Darn, it was, Ruark is right. There's no place where you can do better bird hunting than Africa. There really isn't, because they just have so many darn species and same area. And so anyway, but we went over, and it was a commissioned article really from Diana, and which always makes me nervous. It's like, well, I have to hit the bloody things now. And so we took a Fausti shotgun, and Giovanna Fausti sent it across, real pretty shotgun. And, I wrote about the fact that the shotgun did a whole lot better than the shooter, but it was, we went for three separate species. We went for gray wing, we went for guinea fowl, and we went for snipe. And I'd never hunted snipe before in my life. I just had never hunted snipe. And so we went across. Now, the problem was the gray wings have been hammered by something, and they're not sure exactly what's going on. They think it's a fungal infection. And so we did not get into gray wings. Last time we were there, we got into covey after covey after covey, and that was only a couple of years ago. So it is, their population numbers have, just like animals will do, out in nature, they'll crash occasionally. And so that's what they're experiencing there right now. But it was a beautiful walk, because we were up in the tops of the hills and, working, the dogs were working. So it was a lot of fun to be up there. It wasn't a problem not to see them. We did get into guinea fowl, which is a spot and stalk hunt. And people may think, but guinea fowl, I gotta preface this with saying they ain't the barnyard things that we see, clucking around here. I mean, they are. It's the same species, but they were developed in Western Africa. Historically, their development as a domestic animal was as a guard animal as much as anything else, and as a preventer of snakes from coming in, because the bloody things will kill snakes. And they do it in Texas. I mean, I remember one of the guinea fowls just down the road killing a rattlesnake one time. And, so they're real tough little birds. But the other thing you got to keep in mind, not unlike the barnyard ones, is that the wild guinea fowl have been clocked at speeds greater than any human sprinter. And so they can outrun can outrun all those Jamaican runners. Let's just put it that way, and leave them in the dust. And they also fly, of course, and they are real strong flyers, and they're a big, tough animal. And so we got into them. We spotted them, a couple of different groups of them, coveys of them, and we busted one out. A bunch of frickin' warthogs busted it out for us. We jumped them, and they went right through the covey, so we didn't get those. Should have just shot at the darn warthogs. But anyway, I didn't, I would have just peppered their butts with a shotgun, so that wouldn't have been any good. No. But anyway, it's, you think it's feral hogs, but it's sort of like that. But anyway, so we didn't get into that one, but later on we did get into one, and we knocked them down, and so we got our guinea fowls, and then the last thing we did as the sun was really setting was go snipe hunting, and that was out in marshes. And like I say, I'd never been. I'm sure there's people going, what in the world's with this guy? He's never hunted snipes, but I never had. And I have never hunted a bird that was any more difficult to hunt. And I'm talking about wild quail in South Texas and a high wind or anything else.
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason is we had there were three of us. I can't imagine if there had been the big groups they normally take through there, like 7 gunners. Wouldn't have wanted to go on with them, actually. But you're in a line, and the dogs are working real close because the dogs don't point them. They pop them out of the grass. They just basically jump them.
Yes.
And the birds just pop up. But the problem is they don't fly high. They stay about 3 feet off the ground, and I'm not going to shoot a dog to try to get a snipe. And I had to explain that to the guide, not my PH, actually. Kyle understood it immediately, but I'm not going to shoot close to a dog. I learned that when I was a kid. They're worth more than I am. And then I'm not going to shoot right over the top of a ducking guide or a PH either. And the guide was frustrated with, why don't you take a shot? And I'm like, because it's right over your head. And he's like, well, I'm down lower. And I said, yeah, that ain't happening, man. No bird is worth that. But I finally did get one that was clear of all the intervening objects. And so I knocked this thing down, and it was a little female and beautiful bird, absolutely drop-dead gorgeous bird. And I was showing it to Frances, and she said, this is my wife that said, you will not do any extra taxidermy. And I said, yes, ma'am. And so she looks at it and said, oh, we need to do that as a full mount and have it on our table. And I said something really nasty and dirty, and I'm not going to repeat it on your show to her.
Well,
but I said, are you kidding me? Are you seriously, are you kidding me? You've been climbing up and down me about that. She said, I'm sorry, but I think it's pretty. I said, well, I think so too. So we're having a full body mount in my snipe.
Perfect.
You may well be the only person in all of Georgia that will have an African snipe full body mounted sitting on a table. I'm impressed. I really am. And you should be. You should really be. I've got a duck from the last time I hunted there. We've got it on our bedroom wall. Basically it looks like exactly what it is, which is big teal. But anyway, it's from South Africa, by golly, and we mounted it. And so that was that trip, and it was wonderful. We just had a blast. And from there, of course, we went back to Johannesburg because that's where you go for all your flights. And then we flew to Mozambique. We flew and we went into Catata 11 again, and to finish some business, there in terms of some animals, and also writing about different things that they're doing with conservation still, and new things like hyena reintroductions and, bolstering the populations actually of hyenas, checking on the lions, which are now 100 individuals. They started with 24 about 5-6 years ago. They have 100 individuals now. In fact, they have a lot more. They keep running into individuals they didn't know they had. And they're walking through camps now and roaring and this sort of thing. So everybody's and everybody's like, this is fantastic because, this is wild Africa. So anyway, they are there in good numbers. They're hunting their first lion this coming September, an extra pride male, and so 2/3 of the trophy fee goes back into the conservation and 1/3 goes to their bottom line. And so they have somebody coming in to hunt. They don't, it's not a fenced area, obviously, and they don't have a male, quote unquote, picked out, but they know that they have a number of males that are mature, not in prides, been kicked out of prides. And so they have a good group of males to hunt. It's it's hunting, so there's no guaranteed, but they're, they think they can get into one for the client, but they'll, in all honesty, the hilarious part is I have never seen a lion in Katahdin 11 with all I've written about them except from a helicopter. I've never seen one on the ground. I've seen cheetahs on the ground, but I've never seen a lion. Yeah, I've never seen a lion. And so anyway, people laugh and say, "Oh, you must, you've heard them roar." And I said, "Nope, never heard them roar in Katahdin 11. Now I've heard them roar other places, but I said I've never heard one roar, and I've never seen one on the ground." So they're like, "Well, good grief, you're right about it, like you did." I said, "No, I've never said that in anything I've written." But anyway, so the things, though, that I wanted to hunt, Francis, oh, Lord love my wife. So before we go back on this safari to Katahdin 11, I said, "Sweetie, is there anything you want to do?" She said, "Yeah, I want to go into the marsh again and hunt a Cape buffalo." And I said, "Well, you're not hunting it." She said, "No, I want you to hunt a Cape buffalo again like we did before for meat for a local village." And I said, "You do know that the marshes are where all that crocs are?" And she said, "Yeah, I do."
Yes.
And I said, "You do remember that my life insurance ran out several years ago, okay, that there's no benefit." Well, I guess there is. Big one is I'm not around to annoy her. But anyway, she said, I do understand that. So anyway, we actually tracked Cape buffaloes in the woods to begin with, and we chased them for, we were gone 10 hours. It was a wonderful hunt. We didn't find them standing in any of their tracks. However, on the way back out, the funniest thing happened. So we had chased these bloody things around for hours and hours and hours. It's hotter than blue blazes. And we're heading back to the truck, and our PH, Ben, stops and looks down, looks up at me and grins. And I said, "What's up?" And he said, "You see our footprint there?" And I said, "Well, sort of." He said, "Do you see what's right in the middle of it?" And I said, "Oh, no. Buffalo track." They had double backed on us and just ran right across our tracks while we were trying to track them. They made a big circle and just ran off. And so they're not dumb. Let's just put it that way. No. So we didn't get one there. So the next day, Ben said, "Well, we're going into the marsh." And I said, "Well, you're making Francis's day." And so we had a great time. It was a tough hunt. We were in water up to our waists and slogging through mud and crap and stuff like that. And it was great. I mean, it was we have a photo of Ben who's only wet up to basically his knees, and Mike has wet past his belt. And I'm much taller than Ben, so I don't know what in the world was going on, but obviously I was not doing the technique right. But anyway, Francis said, hang on, I want to take a photo of this. And I said, "Thank you." So anyway, we have that one coming out in a magazine article.
Oh, fantastic.
But we did catch up with a herd. The wind was terrible. I mean, it was swirling. Even I could tell it was swirling and messing us. We got to the last palmetto, with these lala palms is what they're called, about 7 feet tall. Little clump of bush, basically, and we got to the end of it, and Ben turned around to me and whispered, he said, "We can't get any closer. The wind's going to blow us out. They're going to blow out of here real soon." He said, "We're at 178 yards. And I was shooting the camp. I didn't bring a rifle with me. I was supposed to, actually, but something fell apart on this end with the manufacturer being able to get it to us. But anyway, I was shooting a 416 Rigby chambered CZ bolt action rifle, and it was very accurate. I knew already from using it on some other animals. And anyway, he said, can you make the shot? And I said, yeah, he just has to clear, we have to get him clear. And he got
Right.
clear, and I broke his onside shoulder. He turned around, shot low on the second shot, hit him, but shot low on the second shot. And then we ran around, and I don't know, maybe 50, 70 yards. I can't remember right now. I broke the other shoulder, and he went down. And so we got him, and, then what do they say about elk hunting? All the fun stops when you pull the trigger. And so, then but it really wasn't for me. I mean, they were the one doing chopping with axes and everything else to cut him up. But they got him all processed, and we took him to the village, and they would have he was a really, really old but big bodied bull, and they probably, I don't know, maybe 700 pounds of bone meat, something like that.
Goodness,
so
yes,
it would have fed, they divvied up about 10 pounds each. And so, we'll see. I mean, or they would see, but it was hilarious, just watching. I mean, you have this huge rib cage, and this is a message I just want to give to everybody out there. You have this rib cage. You have all the internal organs minus the bladder and really minus the bladder. They cut the bladder away and threw it away. I mean, there's not much. I mean, I would say left behind, Larry knows this from being over there might be 3 or 4 handfuls of stuff left on the ground for the vultures. I mean, they're taking the rib cage, they're cutting the meat out from between the ribs, they're eating the ribs themselves, the whole thing. I mean, they don't waste a bit. The head goes to them, everything on this. I didn't get a trophy. It's called a community buffalo. So we pay for it.
Right.
Pay for the event, we hunt it, but it's a reverse trophy hunt. You kill an old bull that's not going to be a trophy, but it's the same daggone thing, and if you mess up, they can turn you into goo. And so it's the same kind of animal you're hunting if you're hunting wide horns, but you're just paying, the hunter pays for it, and the meat all goes to, and everything, actually, it's a non-exportable animal. There's not an export permit. So we've done that twice. We've loved it both times, Val, and I don't know I'll do it a third time, I might add. But I mean, I might tell them I'd love to, find one in a forest and just spend several days doing that. But but that was a lot of fun. But my bucket list animals for me were a trophy common reed buck, and the reed bucks there are thousands upon thousands of reed bucks. But in all of my months and months and months at Catata 11, with all of the different PHs we've had, and I wrote this in an article recently about this trophy reed buck we took, I had never heard a PH say, that's a trophy reed buck. That's got the horns on it to be a trophy.
Right.
They were, and someone asked me, have you ever shot, you must have shot a Catata 11 reed buck. And my answer was, I've shot over a dozen of them. On this trip, I shot 5. 4 were just meat animals like I had shot before for a village. You shoot them in bunches, and they have a lot of permits given to them by the government for food for the local villages. So I shot 4 one day. We just went out and harvested 4 for meat for a local village. And so I'd done that a bunch, but I had never actually gone out and said, all right, we're not going to shoot something unless it's a trophy. And we went out and then eventually found one out of just scores and scores of reed bucks. And it was one of the most fun hunts I've ever been on in my life, because this reed buck, we jumped him. He went one way, the other reed bucks went the other. Ben got a glance at him, and he said, this reed buck's acting as if he's been shot at. And so he said, I want to get a better look. And he got a better look at him. Right before he dropped like a quail into tall grass, he just collapsed.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Yeah, about out 450, 500 yards away. And Ben got a look at him, and he said, oh, yeah, he's a very pretty buck. He said, I think he's old. And he was, his tips were a little bit worn and beautiful, just gorgeous. But anyway,
cool.
we made a big circle around and came up once again behind a palmetto out in this floodplain area. And we got to 65 yards away from him, and he just sat there and stared at us. The only thing you could see were his eyes and his horns. He's just like a white-tailed buck,
Yes.
one of those white-tailed bucks that says, "You cannot see me." And finally, he, I was waiting on the sticks for, I don't know, a good long while, and could see him, but there's no way I was going to shoot him laying down. I couldn't tell where his body was in the tall grass anyway. And when he came up like an elk or one of their lairs, in that deep woods, or a white-tailed buck a lot of times. He just came up bounding. I mean, he was gone. And so I thought, well, that's it. And Ben, I was on the standing stable sticks again, and he just moved him around and said, look, he'll stop. And he did eventually. He was a little over 100 yards out. He stopped, hit him, and he ran, 50 yards, broke both of his shoulders. I don't know how the heck he ran. But anyway, ran and dropped, and that was it. But just a beautiful old animal, just a gorgeous old animal. And I'm going to do a European mount on him, actually, because I think his horns being black and a white skull is going to be real pretty. Real pretty on him, and I actually am falling more and more in love with European mounts. And I never thought I would, I have to admit, I thought you had to have a shoulder mount or whatever. But anyway, so that was that. But there was one last piece of business that we needed to take care of in Katahdin 11 in terms of hunting. Years and years ago, when we started going to Katahdin 11, they have something there called a zebra that's called a crochet zebra. Now, they've also referred to it as a Salu zebra.
Okay. I've heard
and
that.
It has, so the crochets, the difference between it and say it is a plain zebra. So if you look at plain zebras, I'm going to get nerdy on you for a while. If you look at plain zebras up north, so what we call Burchell's or whatever, but plain zebras are Burchell's and Salus and crochets and all this. It's actually a cline is what they call it. And so if you look at, say, shadow striping, that shadow striping that I have in the Burchell zebra that I got. So it's the dark black stripes, and then in between you've got that sort of gray or sort of black, but sort of faded look into it. But if you look at the genetics and the striping patterns going from north to south into South Africa, et cetera, but starting up as far north as they are, then and these are not the mountain zebras. That's a separate species. But if you look at it, there's clinal variation. So in other words, you can't really tell where you shift from a Burchell's to a Salu to a Crochet's to a whatever normally. But the Crochet's, and that's in striping patterns and the genes. They've shown this over and over again. So they really blend together in a lot of areas. You'll get some that look like one way and some that look like another. But at Katahdin 11, what they have is a crochet zebra, and that animal is noted for its stripes going all the way down to the hooves, all the way around its stomach, and no shadow striping. And it also, and I've got a photo of this for the magazine article I've written, if you look at its back line, and I haven't looked at enough zebra to know if this is a normal thing, but if you look at its back line along its spine and look on either side of it, you'll notice that the striping patterns are similar, but they're not identical. It's asymmetrical. Is what we call it. So it's got this beautiful striping on both sides, and it really is close, but it's not the same. You'll have a big blurb, blob on one side, and then on the other side, that blob will be there, but it'll have a hole in it where it's just not striped. So it's the most beautiful
cool.
freaking thing.
Gosh,
But
yes.
many years ago, when I started going there, those zebras had gotten down to during the Civil War. They killed them down to, I think they detected something like 8 individuals when they came back in. Obviously, there were little pockets of crochet zebras around, and once they created that ecological Eden, if you will, in Catata 11, a lot of animals migrated back in. I mean, we're talking about elephants, we're talking about zebras, we're talking about water bucks, we're talking about everything. It's not that they reproduced enough to get them back up in. Now the crochet zebras are in the thousands. But when I started going there weren't that many permits. And I asked Mark Haldane, I said, I'd really love to shoot one of your zebras. And he said, you ain't going to ever get that because they're booked like 3 years out. And I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, I went in this time and they have, this conservation story. They have done such a wonderful job of protecting those ecosystems, keeping the poachers out away from these big animals, and the zebras are back. They are just literally thousands. You see herds. We saw herds and herds of these animals. And so I got an opportunity. I said they had a permit. Well, they actually had a few permits left, and I said to Ben, I want one. And I said I've always wanted one of these things, and I really want one. And so but the problem is, it's like any other herd animal. There's an awful lot of eyes. And so, there's a ton of eyes, and they all seem to be looking at Mike Arnold when he's trying to quietly stalk and failing miserably at it. And so we had a bunch of blown out stalks, which was good because that's what you want with the hunting. You don't want it to be easy. And then eventually we got to the edge of the floodplain proper, which is where they are. And there were a couple of stallions out there, and Ben took a look at them and told me which one. We were still a little ways out, but and this is something that I bet Larry has used this, folks, but I had never shot this caliber before in my life. Actually, I'd never shot a .416 Rigby either, so that was new for me. No, I had never. No, I'd used my 35 Whalen improved on the last Cape Buffalo I used, killed out there actually. But anyway, no, I used a 33806 semi-custom built rifle. It's also called the 33806 A-frame, I think, is the other term for it. And I'd never held one, let alone shot one. And this was Ben's personal rifle. And what it is, Larry knows this, but I didn't. What it is a 30-06 brass cartridge blown out, the neck blown out to hold a 338 bullet. Diameter bullets. Just like my 35 Whalen improved, it's a 35 Whalen. I mean, it's a 30-06 blown out to 35 caliber. So anyway, it was 338-06 is what I used on the Zebra, and oh my goodness, it's an effective rifle. Hit him high shoulder shot, and he just dropped like a rock. Absolutely dropped like a rock, and it's it was a fairly light rifle. But the recoil wasn't bad at all. I mean, not at all. And so anyway, that was real special to me, too, to be able to use a caliber I'd never used. Never even seen. So I don't know if you've shot one of those before, or Larry, or not, but I haven't.
I have, but not at an animal. I had a friend of mine that had one years ago, and we were just shooting, and he was getting ready to go hunting somewhere, and he said, "You want to shoot this thing?" And I kind of looked at the case, and I thought, "What the heck is this?" I said, "It looks like a 338." No, it doesn't look like a 338, Remington mag or some of the other stuff that I've seen. And he goes, "No, that's what he told me," and he loved it. He used it primarily, I think, back then. He was hunting. This guy was a big elk hunter, so I'm not sure whether he ever took it to Africa or not. But he was telling me it was one heck of a dead elk caliber.
Well, I can tell you one of the toughest animals out there in Africa, as you know, Larry. I mean, the zebra, and I didn't use it
Yes.
on a wildebeest. I mean, wildebeests are real
Yes.
tough too, but I bet you
Yes.
it's really good on that too. But it really was weird to look at the cartridge, flip it over, and see 30-06 on the base,
Exactly.
and then I thought, well, I know what that is. That's like my dad when he was reloading this 35 Whelen Improved, or Ackley, a lot of people call it. He would use 30-06 and he would heat them up and blow out, stretch out the neck in several steps and this sort of thing. But Ben reloads for it. Actually, they reload for all their camp rifles.
Right.
But anyway, he reloads for it. And I've forgotten what the muzzle velocity. He told me, and I've got it written down somewhere. But it was actually fairly, it skipped along there fairly well. And it used a horn.
Probably 2,800 or so.
Probably something like that. And by the way, Hornady, we used your ELDX that I love, and boy, that thing just popped him. And like I say, high shoulder shot, went through, broke him, and it was, he didn't even twitch. So
man.
that was a sweet hunt. And Francis and I Francis looked at the animal and said, this is going to make a beautiful, we're going to do it as a flat skin. I've never done that before.
Really?
And
Good.
because we were thinking about a rug, but we're going to put it in our bedroom. Francis wants it in the bedroom. And she said, can it be flatter so that we're not catching it?
Right.
Sometimes on the rugs in here, and I like the rugs, don't get me wrong, but sometimes because I scuff my feet, I'll catch the darn thing. And I said to Ben, what does a flat skin look like? And he said, well, it's flat. I mean, he said it won't curl up or anything. He said, do it that way. So that's the way we're going to do that one. But it's, crickets. It's a beautiful animal. Now, I gave my Burchell zebra to my grandson because my daughter talked me into it. And she said, when I wrote her and I sent her the photos of this one, she said, I'll trade you. And I said, yeah, that and $20,000, but I ain't, I ain't gonna, I love my grandson and you, but not that much. It'll be here when I'm dead. Don't worry.
There may come a time. Exactly.
I'm a terrible grandfather. That's just no way I'm giving up certain things. But anyway, so that was pretty much it. We finished up, and I sent Larry a photo and a bunch of y'all a photo of one of the things that they do at Katata 11 in all of their camps now is they have cowboy coffee sitting on a charcoal fire in the morning. And
I love it.
In fact, they fired it up when I said to them, I'd love some coffee. They fired up cowboy coffee for this West Texas redneck whenever he wanted it. But it was such a wonderful thing to start out a safari morning. Every morning we'd go to the fire pit. They'd have it burning at Katata 11 at all of their camps, and they'd have that charcoal griller thing sitting next to it with my cowboy coffee with a percolator. And I'm sorry, it just doesn't get any better than that. And I drink espresso, so I'm pretty much a coffee snob, but I tell you, watching that thing percolate just brought back memories of my mama and daddy, I tell you. And a lot of fires that I've been on at hunting camps too, so.
Oh my God, that is the way to have coffee as far as I'm concerned. And I like coffee, and I like it to taste like coffee. I don't want it the color of weak tea. I want it to almost have kind of a violet look, skim to it, or some kind of sheen that looks almost like it's got some oil or something in it. So it really looks truly black.
Yeah,
and tastes that way.
Yeah, my mama would say the spoon would stand up in it if you wanted to go ahead and do that. So, but it was good coffee. I'm not complaining about their coffee. It was very nice, but it was a sweet thing that they've decided to start doing. I think because they have so many of us rednecks from Texas around is probably why.
That could have a little bit to do with it, I think. But how fantastic! Golly, Mike, I love the fact you mentioned the Three Nation Roe deer hunt in the fact that we were in 3 different types of terrain, totally different vegetations in most instances, and all those kind of things. And to me, when you can go to Africa and go to at least 2 totally different areas, whether it's 2 different countries or, some of the countries are so diverse, but you can cover so much different types of habitat. But to do it that way is, I hate the flights. And to me, once you're there, you better take advantage of it, or I have to. And so I think what a perfect safari all the way across.
I agree. And Francis and I felt exactly that. And it was actually a relatively short trip. Francis looked at me and said, "This is a short trip for us over there." And I said, "Yeah, because normally the minimum we're there is 3 weeks. And this time, go to woe, it was 18 days. And you don't even have to, and before people are like, well, I don't have 18 days. And I understand that. But if you stayed in South Africa, for example, Larry knows this once again better than me, but if you stayed in South Africa, you can go from the Kalahari Desert, which is an area that we go to at Kalahari Oryx is a property. You can go from stabilized red sand dunes to then the Great Karoo, and then you could go down into even tropical areas, really tropical areas. Oh, yeah. And so you can actually cover a lot of ground in that area. You could go to Mozambique, which is one thing we'll probably do some year, and start out in the dry, in their, what reminds me of the South Texas non-Sendero cut country where you're trying to, just not have yourself scratched to pieces, but that kind of Mopani kind of situation. And then you can go to the tropics, like Catata 11 is in that deltaic area, like it's southern Louisiana. And so every country, has that kind of diversity for the most part. And you don't have to go to multiple countries over there to cover an awful lot of different species that all of us want to hunt, as well as see an awful lot of different kind of country. It is pretty amazing. It really is pretty amazing. And of course, for most of us, I'm still the same way, even after going there for an awful lot of times for an awful lot of months. Everything still looks like a unicorn to me. I don't care what it is. A springbok still is so sweet to see. It's Amen. Like, I don't know. We watched white-tailed deer, though, in our backyard yesterday, just 2 does, and so I get captivated by that. So I like watching game animals, period. But anyway, everything over there is addictive as far as I'm concerned.
It is. We've talked about this in the past so very often. People knew I'd been to Africa, and they said, "Man, I've been thinking about going to Africa. I think I'm going to go do it." And I said, "Don't do it." And they go, "What do you mean don't do it?" And I said, "Because you're thinking you're going to go to Africa this one time. You're going to get it all out of your system." And I said, "I promise you, on your way home, as soon as you get on that flight, you take a deep breath and you go, oh, my God, that was so much fun. I love every moment of it. If I do this extra job, if maybe I can sell this, maybe I can do this, I can come back next year." And it is. There's an addiction to it. I fell in love years ago with Namibia, and I have traversed that country from the bottom of the ocean, where with South Africa, all the way up through, I guess now it's called the Zambezi Strip, and it used to be the Caprivi Strip, and the diversity there too is so very, oh my gosh, everything from high country to just unbelievable rocks that are so sharp that you almost have to wear steel on the bottom of your shoes so you don't cut your shoes up. And oh gosh, I'm seeing all these animals flash in front of me, all this different. I've been talking. Oh my God, it's bringing back too many memories. Oh God, I want to go back.
Yep, it is. We're in the guest house on the way, actually right before we flew to Catata 11. So we had done the Eastern Cape stuff, the Great Karoo, right. And then at Stormberg, and we'd come back for that night before we flew to Beira and then into camp. And anyway, so So we're standing there at the fireplace, just chatting with folks, enjoying our sundowners at the guest house, Africa Sky Hope Boutique Hotel, and just having a great time. And one of the young guys said, I said, you know, how many times have y'all been here? And he said, oh, this is my first. And I said, well, what do you think? He said, I'm gonna plan to come back, and here are the species I want. And he was talking to me about the tiny 10, the pygmy antelopes. He said, have you ever hunted any? And I said, yeah, I've got my tiny 10 plus one. And I said, so yeah, but, I said, that's really addictive. I said, you know, because you're constantly, now I need a dick. Now I need this. Now I need that. I said, so be careful what you're wishing for. He said, oh, but I want all of them. And I said, I understand, but I said, take a deep breath and, you know, pace yourself. But anyway, you know, it is addictive. It really is. I haven't met anyone that went over yet. I've heard of people, you know, people say, oh, no, I know so-and-so went one time and that was enough. And, you know, I'm sure there are people out there like that, but I haven't ever met somebody like that. I've only met folks in airports, standing waiting for gun processing, at guest house, or in the safari camps that say the same thing, which is, this is my whatever number trip. If it's number one, yeah, I'm coming back, kind of thing.
Absolutely. There's just, it is such a truly unique adventure in so many different ways. And for those folks who have not gone, if you love the outdoors, I don't care whether you love to hunt, whether you love to fish, because the fishing there is phenomenal too. I've been told, although I have had the opportunity to fish only a very, very few times, but understand that fishing's out of this world. I know the bird hunting is good. I know the big game stuff is good. The food is delicious. The listening to the different animals and the insects. Oh my gosh. You know, if you haven't been, you need to go. Just plan on it. Go. I can borrow the money. I can pay it back. Don't worry about the cost of it right now. Just go ahead and go.
Amen. I really do think all hunters ought to go to Africa once in their life.
Yes, sir.
And I know it is addictive and they may end up going back, but I think we owe it to ourselves to make that trip, because the diversity, if nothing else, of game animals is just out of this world. You'll never have the opportunity to hunt the number of species that you can in one trip. Over here, it's not the model that we have. It's not the way that we do it. And there's nothing wrong with North American hunting. I can sit in a deer stand until the cows come in, and I'm just perfectly happy. Okay. So I don't want people to think, oh, well, no, I love all kinds of hunting. I love squirrel hunting. Okay. So I love hunting, period. However, there is something different about Africa.
There truly is. Mike, you mentioned the new book you're working on.
Yes, sir.
What stage are you in on that one? I know that you've been working on it for a little bit now.
Yeah, not it. So what I'm doing right now is collecting information, although, so I have all of the chapters mapped out, and the chapters are going to be around species, game species, like I mentioned, the Blessbok and Bontebok, and there'll be chapters on Pear David's deer, which people may go, what in the world's that? You ought to look it up. It's a pretty cool story too about how hunters have brought that back.
Yes, it is.
Now, it is to the stage where I am now lacking two species, so two chapters that I could, and I haven't really started writing on it yet, but I have the information on everything else, all the scientific stuff that I want to turn into actually readable material and that sort of thing for each one of the species.
You do that so
but
well.
There are two left, the two species left that we're going to hunt. One that Larry knows this. I convinced Frances that she made me go into crocodile-infested waters again just to try to get rid of me. In April of next year, we're going to the Arctic Ocean on snowmobiles to hunt muskox. So we're flying into Inuvik, And Frances keeps looking at me going, I hate cold weather. Why have I agreed to do this? And I said, well, because I'll never get a magazine article out if you don't go along and do all the photography and videography. And I said, besides, think about the northern lights. And she said, yeah, but I hate cold weather. And we'll dress warm. So anyway, we're gonna hunt muskox, and I'll write about that. And then we're gonna do a chamois. I call them chamois. They're chamois. We're going to Spain in June of next year, and that'll be the last one. And between now and then, I'm going to start, Francis and I actually were talking about it this morning, I'm going to start going ahead and writing because I'm in the mood to write, and I've gotten so much information. Crochet zebra is one of the ones I'm going to write about that we just hunted, and so, and the Bontebok and Blessbok. And so I'm really looking forward to a tentative title until Diana Rupp, who will edit the book again, and my book agent, BG in New York, they'll get a hold of it. But the tentative, and they'll say, this title is as awful as all your other titles, but I'm just calling it Hunters and the, Bringing Back the Extinct or something like that. That's my little, bookmark for it right now. And so anyway, that's not what the final title will be. I know, because none of my final titles of books have been what I thought they would be. So, but that's what I'm working on.
I remember at least one of those where the title changed considerably, but.
Yep. Sure did.
Oh my goodness, Mike! I so look forward to getting together with you. We'll have to try to plan a trip somewhere up to the Choctaw Lodge or someplace like that here before too very long. Just kind of what a great place to spend some time, even if we just sit there and tell stories and have an adult beverage in the evening, watching the sun go down. But remind people, you've been my guest. Thank you so very much, numerous times. I can't wait to get you back on. I've got a couple other topics I really want to get into with you, but I think we're going to run out of time this time. So tell everybody how, again, to get copies of your current book and to learn a little bit more about some of the things that you're doing.
Absolutely. So they can go to my website, MikeArnoldOutdoors.com, and that'll get them to everything. Larry is coming up on another podcast of mine, podcast episode called Bringing Back the Wild. But they can go to my website. They can reach all of that. They can invite me to talk. They could do all sorts of different things. Now, if they're just interested in the books, Bringing Back the Lions, Bringing Back the Wild, those are my two latest books, then they can go to Amazon. They can go to their bookstore. They can go anywhere. They're even in South Africa, Zimbabwe, et cetera, actually has them available, Bringing Back the Lions. So they can go anywhere and get those books. But if they want a signed copy, go to MikeArnoldOutdoors.com and order one, and I'll get you a signed copy in the mail.
Mike, you mentioned Bringing Back the Wild podcast. Where do people access it as well, too?
Absolutely. Thank you, Larry, for asking. So if you go to my website, the most recent episode is there, but then all of the other episodes, and what y'all will see is the number one episode number one, is Larry Weishuhn, and that was the very first episode. And the nice thing about it is I used it as a bookend. The last one that I just interviewed him for is going to be the very last one of the year. And so, I know, and I have to wait a little while, which is what's bugging me, because I want to just go ahead and put it out there, but I'm going to use it as a bookend at the end. But so they can go to my website, just hit the button that says podcast, and it'll pull it in. But they can also find Bringing Back the Wild on Podbean, on Apple, on any platform that they want to get it on, and it's also on Carbon TV. And so folks access it there as well, just like yours. And you have a bunch of stuff on Carbon TV, but they can go there. But it's on Apple and all the rest of them, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. It's on all of them.
Absolutely, folks. If you're listening, or even if you're not listening, and you are listening, tell somebody else about it, because Mike does such a fantastic job about it. And in all instances, when you get the opportunity where there's a chance to rate those, if you would, please go to rate them and I know after you listen to Mike, you go, "Oh my God, that's not a 5-star. That's a 10-star." But they only go 5 stars. So I guess I'll have to back off and give him a 5-star. So
you and I both know it's the guests, except for me on yours. But it's the guests, that make the show. And I just want to throw one plug out there too, that I got the opportunity of a lifetime the other day because of Erica Turgeson, who is our political action committee person at Dallas Safari Club. Erica arranged in Washington, D.C., and Erica arranged for Ambassador Dr. Elsie Kanza, the ambassador to the U.S. from Tanzania. She's actually let me interview her for a podcast episode, and you talk about an amazing person and an area that so many hunters, including myself, see as the epitome of a hunting trip and a safari.
Yes.
So anyway, she's amazing. Y'all will need to, I'm just mentioning that's coming up a little ways down the line, but there's a lot of folks like Larry and Ambassador Kanza and all who have been very kind to this podcaster and allowed him to interview him.
Well, you're very, very kind, Mike. I know that this will appear after we have been at the DSC Summer Show, but I so very look forward to have spent time with you there, and it was Francis as well, too. And much as I hate to say this, we better close this down for the time being. Thank you so very much for being with me again, and I can't wait until the next opportunity that we have to kind of sit around. Like I said, I've got 2 or 3 different subjects that I want to really broach with you. I'm going to not even mention them because I want to leave that little bit of mystery out there, but we'll have you back on here before too very long, and we'll delve into several different things.
Oh, Larry, thank you so much for allowing me to be around the campfire with you again.
I can't wait till we do it in real life. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us. And we'll be back here next week. By the way, don't forget that we do a bonus episode, a video episode that's available at Larry Weishuhn's Campfires on YouTube. Totally different from what we're doing here, but invite you to check those out as well, too. And again, Mike, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. And as I said, we'll be right back here next week.
DSC's Campfires has also been brought to you by the Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, Texas Wildlife Association, Habit, Our Gear, Your Adventure, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.